Welcome to A Space to Speak Your Mind,
a radio program and a podcast
about mental health and well-being,
made by people with lived experiences
as part of a wellbeing group run by Cornwall Mind.
We do occasionally cover subjects that some listeners may find distressing.
For more information, help and support,
please visit cornwallmind.org.
A Space to Speak Your Mind with Cornwall Mind.
Welcome to the November programme.
I'm Gaelle.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Francesca.
On this month's show,
we'll be hearing from Paramedic Daniel about his own experiences around mental health.
Neuroscientist Nicole Vignola, and she will explain how giving out compliments or engaging in random acts of kindness can be as rewarding as receiving them.
Victoria will be chatting to Katie Roberts, who cycled around the UK to raise money and awareness around mental health.
First of all, let's hear from Richard talking to Dr. Andy Cope about just how to do the simplest things can spread joy to others.
A Space to Speak Your Mind with Cornwall Mind.
As the dark nights get longer, many of us will feel a seasonal shift in our moods. But there are some very simple things we can do to give ourselves a boost. Small acts can create a ripple effect of positivity, and often even the slightest everyday actions, such as going for a walk, can provide the biggest boost to our spirits. Dr. Andy Cope is a leading authority on happiness and believes that we can do simple things to spread a little happiness. And he's here with me now. So do you think the darker nights and colder months do impact our mood?
Well, no, thanks for the invite, Richard. I'm super excited, actually, to talk about what you do as well, because I think we're in the same ballgame here. It's big picture of trying to kind of volunteer to do something that's bigger than yourself. Intuitively, we know that will make us happy.
So with darker nights, the winter is a real big thing for me, trying to keep that positivity up. From your experience and the people that you work with, do you find that those darker nights and those colder months really impact our mood?
They certainly can do. I think we have to be a little bit careful. The opposite is true in the summer. So we know that we're kind of buzzing with energy in the summer because sunshine creates what's called serotonin, which is basically a feel-good chemical. So sunshine naturally boosts our immune system and our happiness. And of course, that's in short supply this time of year, the sunshine. Because I spent about 40 years also not feeling particularly great in the autumn and winter because they're dark and they're cold. But then I discovered this Danish concept, you might have heard of it, hygge. And hygge is a beautiful thing because hygge essentially, it hasn't got a direct English translation. It sort of means coziness or comfort or being enveloped in snuggliness. It's not quite that. In fact, the Welsh have got a word, cwtch. So cwtch, if anybody speaks Welsh, then cwtch is quite close to hygge. And I think autumn and winter are so perfect for noticing the beautiful ordinary things, being snuggled up under your blanket while you watch a box series on Netflix, or going for a walk but being all wrapped up and so the wind's buffeting you but you're all wrapped up in your coat and your boots. It's those kind of things. So basically happiness doesn't have to be some big set piece of going to Barbados on a cruise. It can be these beautiful little autumnal moments, looking out of a window and noticing Mother Nature is closing down and the trees are changing colour. That, I think, is where autumnal happiness really lies, in the moment.
I kind of feel that the end of the summer, if it's that transition period, and for a lot of us, making that transition can be quite hard, but it's noticing these things, isn't it? So for me, going out for a walk or going out for a run in the morning, and those autumn colours, and even the cool wind and the rain, it can lift our mood if we put ourselves in that right frame of mind.
Yeah, but you have to be aware of it, because I think the issue is, I don't get too deeply into this, but in pure mindfulness, right, there's no past and there's no future, there's only the present moment. So a plot spoiler for everybody listening to this is your entire life is lived in the present moment. But what the modern world's really good at is making us a bit dissatisfied with this moment, or anxious, or this moment's not good enough. So we end up rushing through life at 100 miles an hour to get to a moment that's going to be better than the one we're in. We're impatient. So we're trying to get to another moment. But of course, mindfulness says there is no moment. There's only the moment you're in. So therefore, instead of trying to rush through it at 100 miles an hour, hygge and mindfulness are about trying to get into the moment and snuggle into it and notice it. Because the truth is, without getting too deep, is if you can find a way of falling in love with the present moment, then you've fallen in love with life itself. But the question is how? How are we supposed to do that when the world is 100 miles an hour? And this is where I think kind of mindfulness comes into the fore, and human relationships and all that beautiful stuff.
So what simple things can we do? Because I think mindfulness kind of has this thought, we all think of mindfulness as being some big thing or some yoga retreat somewhere, when it can be just the simple daily things. And we've talked about walking, we've talked about getting outside. What are those other simple things that we can do?
Well, your listeners in Cornwall and wherever down in the southwest, what a beautiful place to practice hygge. You don't have to sit with your legs crossed omming for 3 hours. You're just taking your dog for a walk on the beach or in the hills and just marvelling at the beauty of Cornwall. That's hygge right there. Like I say, instead of rushing through life. In fact, the Japanese have got a term, shinrin-yoku, which is essentially going for a walk, but Instead of a fast walk, it's walking with your senses fully open. It's like noticing things you wouldn't normally notice, listening to things, feeling the wind on your face, and just opening your senses and going for a walk in nature with your senses fully alert. Then what you will do is you will be in that moment. You will notice things you wouldn't ordinarily notice. It's good for your well-being. And I just think that when the world's doing its worst, which quite frankly it is at the moment, you switch the news on, it's brutal and relentless out there. And I think when the world's doing its worst, it becomes even more important that we know how to be at our best, which is why mind is so important, right? The world is kind of doing all sorts of stuff to us at the moment, and finding peace in the moment, that's really where the magic source of happiness really is.
And I'm really interested as well because there's this Christmas Call Companion volunteer drive, and we talk a lot about giving and being part of something bigger, and giving back is so important. So tell me about this drive that is being launched.
Yeah, bingo, mate. I mean, everybody listening to this, we already know that common sense tells us that probably the single biggest way of feeling great is to do a good deed for somebody else. This is a beautiful, genuinely good news story in a world that isn't got many good news stories. It's a partnership between Boost, who make drinks, and Re-Engage is a charity that tries to eliminate loneliness in the older generation. Because Christmas in my house is brilliant, right? I've got a big family and it's hilarious and it's like full on, but not everybody has that. And there are certain people that are so isolated, and Christmas just exacerbates that isolation problem. People can reach their lowest ebb. What the Boost and Re-Engage project is doing is seeking to team up Gen Z, which is mostly young people, right, who drink the drinks, who are then going to get trained to be Christmas call companions so that they can then link with older generation. So the older generation get a phone call or a visit at Christmas. So human connection. We're back to that simple kind of obviousness. It's about volunteering, which makes you feel good. It's about random acts of kindness, which makes you feel good. And it's about human connection, which makes you feel good. So there are genuinely no losers in this.
It's all those great things, and you're absolutely right. At this time of year, to be able to do that, and Christmas isn't a great time for some people. It just brings back bad memories and can be difficult if you've lost someone during that time as well. But if you're able to do something positive and create a new story to the time of year.
It's not a big time commitment. It's a small act of kindness that will make a huge difference to the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the visit. I could give you some homework actually as well for everybody. This is a beautiful thing. It's not just for Christmas, but it's for always. It's the science of hugging. I'll just give this as homework for anybody listening to this because I love it. So are you a hugger, mate? Are you a huggy person?
I am, but the people around me aren't.
Yeah. Okay. The science of hugging, even if you're a non-hugger, and we just want to take this off the Doctor of Happiness, right, is the average hug, if you are a huggy person, the average hug lasts 2.1 seconds. So if you are a hugger or you watch huggers, it'll be like 1, 2, finished. But here's the homework for everybody listening to this. For the love to transfer between two people, a hug actually needs to last 7 seconds or longer, which is a long time, right? And it's not for strangers in the park. That's a bit weird. There's something called Dunbar's number in positive psychology, which is basically means that you spend 60% of your life with about 12 people. So this is the absolute core of your life, your closest family, your closest friends. So just for those, they need to love you and you need to love them back. I want everybody listening to this, even if you're a non-hugger, is to experiment with the 7-second hugging, right? It's a fantastic thing. I mean, don't count out loud because that kills it. I did learn that early on. But if you just hold on for 7 seconds, the beauty of it is that's just long enough for the love to transfer. You don't have to say, I love you. A 7-second hug is basically an I love you hug. I'll tell you what, let's finish with like a really big point. If you cast your mind back to the pandemic and think about the social distancing and the social isolation, whereas essentially you and I know, Richard, that human beings, we are social creatures. People need people.
Absolutely, that is so true. I'd like to know about the Art of Brilliance. Tell me about your organisation, what you do, why you set it up, for people to know about the great work that you do.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thanks for asking. We run a training company. We write books on positive psychology. So basically, I spent 15 years at Loughborough University. I flipped psychology on its head. Psychology for 150 years has been phobias, disorders, anxiety, depression. I get that. I know all about that. I got thinking, well, who are the people who aren't ill? Who are the ones who are already happy? So I flipped it totally on its head and decided to look at the handful of people we can all think of right now in our lives who've got something extra going on. It's an extra energy, an extra smile on their face. They seem to make life look a bit easier. It isn't, but they seem to have that something that enables them to cope better. So I was like, well, who the heck are they? Because psychology has not studied them for 150 years on the grounds of them not being ill. I didn't know it was going to be a job. I didn't know I was going to be a doctor of it, really. I flipped it and decided to do that. I got myself a PhD, and now I run a training company testimony that basically shares the secrets of that, really. The obviousness of that, we've covered it on here, is a walk in nature, 7-second hug, human connection, random acts of kindness, volunteering, having purpose in your life, all the things we intuitively know will make us feel good, but the modern world is trying to make us forget.
And I love, because you obviously go into businesses, you're going to organisations, but you're also going to schools, and having that so early on in our lives is so important, isn't it?
It's about habits for me, mate. So yeah, we're not for profit in terms of our company. So we charge decent fees for businesses, but then we put our profits into school projects, because you're absolutely right. It's about good habits. I read on the BBC News website the other week that teenagers are now spending 5.5 hours a day on their smartphones. And that is stoking up a problem in the future, because we know intuitively that isn't good for your mental health. It's not good for your relationships. It's not good for you, what's happening between your ears. So actually getting people into good habits early on, I think, is the key to solving the mental health crisis.
Yeah, it's teaching earlier on and teaching those skills that maybe we didn't have when we were younger. And as we were bringing back to the subject, giving back. So if we're able to learn those skills, we can give those to others. So just remind us about the Christmas Call campaign volunteer drive, as far as where people can get more information and where they can sign up as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm hoping that a lot of your audience will be up for this, because if you go onto reengage.org, that's a charitable website, there'll be a button on there that links you to the Boost campaign. And essentially all it is you volunteer for that. You get a little bit of training on how to become a Christmas Call companion, and then you get teamed up with an older person and you get to chat to them, they get to chat to you, you get to make their day. That's the most important thing.
Brilliant. And we'll put a link in our show notes as well, so people can click straight through to there. Thank you so much. That's Dr. Andy Cope, the leading authority on happiness.
Thanks for having me, fella.
A space to speak your mind.
Hello, my name is Francesca.
Hello, I'm Julie.
And I'm Gaelle.
And we're going to introduce Daniel.
Hello.
Daniel. What do you do for your work?
Unfortunately, due to illness, I no longer work, but for many years, over 35 years, I was a paramedic.
Were you a paramedic in Cornwall?
Yes. Truro, Newquay, Saltash. I worked around most of Cornwall.
How long have you been a paramedic for?
Ooh, I worked in the ambulance service before they even had paramedics. They didn't come in till the 90s, so pretty much ever since paramedics have been around, I've been a paramedic.
What is the difference between paramedic and what was there before? Is it just in the name?
The word paramedic came in more during the wars in Vietnam with the American forces. It became a popular name for ambulance people with extra training. So when I joined, they used to have ambulance people with Miller training, it was called, and then different levels of skills had different extra things. And the Americanized word paramedic started to be used, and so they classified paramedics as ambulance people with extra skills.
Was it quite a hard job for you to do?
Yes, it was. It's quite a hard job for anyone to do. Personally, I never wanted to do it. I know I did it for a very long time, considering, but I happened to fall into the job at a convenient time and carried on doing it. But it is not an easy job to deal with physically or mentally.
How did you cope with a job, having in mind that for you it wasn't a vocation? So what techniques, what did you do to cope with everything that you saw and heard and had to help with?
Well, I joined the ambulance service in the mid-80s. And at that time, mental health was not something that was talked about. And if you didn't cope with a job, if you got emotional, if you got upset, it was a very male-dominated area, and you would be made fun of, you would probably leave the job. So if you got upset or emotional about things, you tend to hide it. If you brought it up with your managers, they would tend to threaten disciplinaries. So it was a very harsh thing to deal with. And at first, when you see a deceased person, it's a bit of a shock. And then you see them again and again, more people. And you think, I can cope with this. And you initially feel that, yes, you've dealt with it. What you do not see is the cumulative damage that it does to your psyche, your intellect. You might be able to deal with one thing, but the build-up over years and years of seeing extremely traumatic things or being put into very dangerous or violent situations, or even the strangest little things can be very upsetting. And eventually you have a very heavy burden placed on you, and you're not even aware of it because it's just been put on one grain of sand at a time.
So was there any event that triggered a big reaction on your mental health? Or was it just that cumulative effect that you talked about?
I had some ongoing home life problems, and I was having an extremely large amount of very serious jobs at work, and I thought I was coping fine. And I went on holiday, And I've always done everything. I've always been a very active person, parachuting, hang gliding, abseiling, you name it, I'd do it. And I went to jump out of a tree with a rope attached to me, and I froze. And I thought that doesn't make sense, and I couldn't understand why I froze. And I did it in the end, but couldn't understand it. Next day, I started crying, and I couldn't understand it. Then I came home from holiday, and I just sobbed. And I didn't understand why. And that was the beginning. That was a fall off a cliff for me. That was suddenly something was wrong and I couldn't find out what it was. And I went to my doctor and he said, I think you might have depression. And I thought, no, I don't. Don't be stupid. and it becomes as a shock. You're trying to function without realising that something's wrong. And that is very difficult.
And I would imagine at the time, depression was not something that was out in the media. People didn't talk about it.
It was nowhere near as commonplace as nowadays. I, unfortunately, had lost several friends through suicide in the ambulance service and fire service and police, because all colleagues talk to each other. And I was very active in trying to help my colleagues, but I didn't realise or think it would ever happen to me. And most people don't until it happens to them. And it came as quite a shock. It wasn't talked about. I was, after a very bad accident, told by a manager that I was big enough and ugly enough to deal with it, so just deal with it. There was no counselling, there was no support. And so I started trying to introduce it into the ambulance service.
What are the top tips for people?
If somebody is suddenly finding them in a difficult situation, recognition is the biggest thing. Not trying to blind yourself to the fact there's a problem, accepting and realising that something is not right. It's a human reaction. It's perfectly normal. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to run away from. You need to accept that you've got a problem. Once you do that, you can then start dealing with the problem. But until you accept there's a problem, you can never work on it. So the biggest thing for me is acceptance. And then you can seek help or work by yourself to get help, or take whatever pathway is suitable for you, because everyone finds different pathways for treatment and help, better or worse. But until you realise and can put your hand up and say, I think I've got a problem, nothing can help.
Was there a thing that just clicked to you, just to get you to get over the mountain? You just suddenly thought, I'll go to do art, or I'll go... let's go into the music, or was it something that made you feel better in yourself?
It took a long time. I had some time off sick and tried to carry on, but the problems kept getting worse. I threw myself more into physical activity. Initially, and I didn't know where it came from at the time, there was some self-harm, which you are ashamed to admit, you don't want to talk about, you try and hide it. But having my medical background, thought this is not the way things are meant to be. There is a problem here. And I threw myself into running, martial arts, any form of fitness, and that to me was a form of self-harm. I just pushed myself really hard until I was in pain. But I found that helped. It was better than just self-harming yourself in a different way. So I found fitness and throwing myself into activities very beneficial until my mind was in a place where I could start processing and coping with things.
Would you say that talking about it, the self-harm and the dark thoughts that you have, is that a part of a treatment or of a recovery to open up about it?
Very much so. It's part of, as I said earlier, the acceptance, the admitting there is something not right in you at the time. And initially, I can remember cutting myself and then going out, pretending everything was fine and bumping into my colleagues. And then my colleagues were looking at me in a strange way, and I didn't realise the blood was running down my legs and I had a pair of shorts on. And at that point, I thought, I've got to admit to this. Once I've done that, again, you've got to accept it before you can treat it or work on it. So the talking became very powerful in my progression of improving. So much so that I started doing talks. I started openly talking to conferences or meetings about the problems I was going through, to make people aware that they may be going through the same thing and not even realise it. And then people would start coming up to me and saying, don't tell anyone, but I've got the same problem. And then as soon as they admitted to that, it was a massive step. And then they could start healing as well. So the more people were able to admit to it or able to speak about it, I found the better and faster the healing process could be for anyone involved.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
I was wondering, how does the weather affect you? Like, if it's really wet and rainy outside, how does it make you feel?
Nowadays, it's not as bad, but at the time when I was going through mental health problems, it would have a significant impact on it. Not just the weather, lots of different things. It could be what's on television. It could be somebody who's spoken to me at the supermarket. It could have a very detrimental effect. And I realised that the most tiny thing can actually make you crash. So again, it's all part of the learning how to deal with it, how to manage things that would normally upset you and trying to view them from a different perspective, try and look at them in a different way. So it might be a rainy day, but you have to view that as it's good for the garden. That's a nice simple example to try and put a positive thing on each problem.
You said to us before we started that last winter was a really hard one for you. You stayed at home a lot, and this year was going to be different. You weren't going to do that again.
No, because I've been diagnosed with an incurable disease which has taken away my mobility. I spent a lot of time sat at home in a corner doing nothing, listening to the radio, reading books and not doing much, not seeing many people. And I could recognise from having had depression and problems in the past that could lead to similar things again. So I started exercising regularly, and there was an exercise program on the radio that I would do every day, and started trying to make sure I didn't fall into that easy routine of sitting there and feeling sorry for myself. So that's how I've ended up helping in the radio environment. I thought this radio station that I was listening to was helping improve my life, so maybe I could join and help improve others' lives by doing so. And in the same process, by helping others, you help yourself so much more. So you might be doing it for others, but you benefit so much by giving and trying to help other people. So that's why I'm determined this year I'm going to be having something to do rather than sitting there like I did last year.
If things feel difficult, what do you do to keep yourself feel calm?
If things feel difficult, I believe everything is the way you look at things. So let's imagine we're on a hill and you're looking at something that's horrible, like a rubbish tip. What you need to do is mentally get up, walk around the other side of the hill and look at the sunrise. You need to not just sit there and stare at the big problem in front of you. You need to change your perspective. You need to look at things from a different way. You might not always be able to move away from the problem, but you can look at it from different angles. You can walk around. So if something seems overwhelming to me, I try and look at it from different angles and think, okay, my mind's telling me this is dreadful, but my mind might not be right. Let's look at it in a different way, or even talk to people and see what they say to make sure it's not as bad as it really seems. That's the way I try and deal with things.
You've mentioned a few times today that you are working on helping other people, getting involved in different activities. How did you make that transition of looking after your own well-being to finding solutions for other people that, from what I'm hearing, and I can really feel it quite deeply, is that helping other people has become very meaningful for you? What was a transition between just you and then including other people?
I found it difficult to accept I had a problem initially, and I could see other people who had problems. As I've mentioned earlier, I lost friends, good friends, to mental health and suicide. And before I had a problem, I was trying to help them. Once I had a problem, I still couldn't quite accept it. So I'd throw myself into helping others, and then I'd recognise the similarities between the problems they were having and the problems I was having. And I found that by helping others, it was diminishing the difficulties I was going through. It was kind of sucking the poison out of me by offering to do more for other people. And so I threw a lot of effort into trying to get the system to change, trying to get the world to change, trying to get the people to not be afraid when they talked about mental health, not go, oh, don't say anything but. I'd rather stand up and shout. No, I've had a mental health problem and I've dealt with it, and that makes me strong. Unfortunately, I grew up in a time when that didn't exist, but that's why I was very keen to help others, so other people, and fortunately, nowadays in the world is a great deal more accepting of people who are brave enough to stand up and say that, and I would encourage anyone and everyone, if you think you've got a problem, stand up and say it, because it shows amazing strength and courage.
Do you have any animals? Because they really help me when I'm having a bad day.
Animals are amazing. I have 3 cats and my wife's got a horse and a pony. I am not horsey, so I don't go near those much. But the beauty of animals is they don't judge. They will accept you for whoever and whatever you are. They're wonderful. They won't make fun of you. They won't cause you any harm. They will just accept the beauty inside you. And animals can go a long way to helping with problems in life, including mental health problems. And we can learn a lot from them.
I think that's very true, because in groups of animals and dolphins, and when you see in elephants, one of them's upset, they all come together and go and look after them.
Yes, as I say, the human race really could learn a great deal from the compassion that animals can show.
I always love it when you have a dog and they're so happy to see you. You can be gone for about 5 minutes, but they come and wag their tail and go, "You're back," and it's so nice.
I think I would like to add that this podcast has been led by the Mind charity, and the website is an amazing source of support on there. You can find people to talk to, there are groups you can join, and there are pages where you can search for information. And what Daniel said is talk to someone, and if you find that that person is not listening or it's not gelling between the two of you, go and find someone else, because just because someone says that they're there to help doesn't mean that they're the right match for you. So there's an awful lot of resources nowadays that are available, and then listen to more stories from Daniel to come up in the podcast.
Thank you so much for sharing all your experiences. You've been amazing to do this today, and if everybody is in need, just to show that you've got through it, and if you are going through problems, just go and seek help.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I strongly believe that we should be talking more about this and dealing with it like the beast that it is, rather than some scary thing that we lock in a cupboard.
And I would just finish off by saying thank you, Daniel, for being part of a change.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for all for your time.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
Now let's hear from Victoria chatting to Katie Roberts, who cycled around the UK to raise money and awareness around mental health.
I am so delighted to have Katie Roberts here, who cycled around the whole of the UK coast fairly recently to raise mental health awareness and funds for a number of charities. Hi, Katie.
Hello, hi.
So tell me, how did this all come about?
Wow, that is a good question. It started actually from something quite sad, something very sad. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 17, and couldn't cope really. Didn't know what to do. Felt like my whole world crumbled. You know, he was my protector, and so for many years after that it was just sort of surviving, but I felt so helpless. I felt like I wanted to do something, I just didn't know how, and I was very angry with the world and the mental health system, and angry with my dad. I think for a long time I didn't know what to do, and then I've always been quite sporty, and it helped. For a long time I actually kind of stopped doing sport, and actually when I came back to being active, it really helped my mental health, and it helped me. And over the years I was like joining clubs and creating clubs. I love kind of getting people together. A bit of a slow burner, and then I've always had it in the back of mind I wanted to do like a big swim or a big ride or something, but I think I made it too unachievable. I had to be like the world or something, because I was like, my dad's that important, it needs to be that grand,
something big,
exactly. But then I think actually that was the thing that started it. I actually joined a guy called Zanny on a tandem who'd lost his sister to suicide, and I joined him, and I kept saying, oh, I wish I did something like this, I wish I did something like this, and he said, you still can. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, because he was like, other people had done it before me, and so I was like, oh okay, and then just kind of planted the seed, and then the kind of drive, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was just like, it just feels right, I need to do something now. And I was just going to do John O'Groats to Land's End. Exactly.
Just a small cycle,
exactly. And then I just was like, oh, I love the sea. I'm a massive surfer and swimmer, so I was like, oh, I'm going to miss the sea. And I was like, oh, why don't I go around the coast? And then I was like, oh, that's far. But I was like, well, YOLO, just, if you're going to do it properly, and quit my job. And
you quit your job to do this?
Quit my job to do this. I was like, guys, they are a bike company, so they got it.
What did they say when you told them about it?
I think they laughed, and then were like, oh, okay. And then they were like, great. They were just like, awesome, absolutely, we'll support you 100% of the way. So and then as soon as I started telling people, I was like, oh, this is real now. And then I turned my back room of my house, which is my laundry room, into like a plotting dungeon. It was just like maps everywhere and post-it notes, and just became like a big, like, I was like, right, is happening. And I've never been so focused. I'm always a bit all over the place and different ideas, but this was, I've never been so focused in my whole life. So that was pretty cool for me. Yeah.
How long did that planning process take, and what did you do to plan this trip?
Yeah, well, I think I made the decision around Christmas time. I think I started telling people in January, and then I left on June the 1st. I think I had a map on the wall, and then I had a timeline, and it was just a case of, can I get some kit? Can I tell people about it? And then I was like, right, I want to raise money for mental health. That was huge. And actually that took up a lot of time. It was like, where and what, and I did a lot of research on like, where can the money go and where does it need help? And that was quite interesting. Was actually, I opened up my world to mental health, and I hadn't really done that for a long time, and I was like, people are still struggling, and it was
particularly now after COVID.
Oh my god, yeah, I kind of shut myself off from that world. I guess I felt a lot stronger now to open it up, and that was quite hard as well, was actually telling people. So a lot of people in Cornwall didn't know how my dad died. I moved here and it was like strange because there's a lot of stigma and just a lot around it, and so for a long time people knew my dad had passed away, but they didn't know how, and it was quite nice that I could live that life where I could just talk about my dad without anyone having any preconceptions or weirdness, and that was quite nice. So that was quite hard, was actually opening up and saying, hey, my dad died of this, and there's so much around that because I was really worried that it would take over from who he was. It would be Katie's dad that did that, rather than Tim Roberts, who loved cars and cigars and drinking wine and
was a great person.
Exactly. So there's a lot of that, and I was like, I don't want to take that away from him, but my biggest drive was if it can help other people, if there's other people out there who are feeling the same, like my dad or whatever, or someone like me who's lost someone to not just lost someone to suicide but grief, so I was like, that was a stronger drive, was like, I hope I can help.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes sense. Like a real sense of purpose, I guess.
Oh my god, yeah. The biggest sense of purpose I've ever had, yeah.
Was your dad suffering with mental health problems in the back before?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've had a lot of chats with people on the ride who have suffered with mental health, and it is so different for everyone. I think I don't really remember my dad being depressed as a kid, but I think a few things happened in the last couple of years of his life that I think just took a toll. So we moved house, he took voluntary redundancy. So there was a lot of I think this happens a lot with men, is like pride. Like he couldn't provide as well as he did for his family. And I think he was away from his community. So he was away from his parents and his family and his friends. So we moved, and I think it all just got too much. So yeah, his depression got quite bad very quickly, and I think I've heard and seen that a lot with older men. If your purpose is taken away, or if you don't feel like you can provide, you feel like everyone else is better off without you, which is just not true. But trying to kind of talk about that and show people that's not necessarily the right decision.
Absolutely. I think it's quite tricky with men particularly, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Like you said about the provider element, and I think men can kind of shy away from talking about the issues that they've got.
Yeah, 100%. And I've got guy mates, and we've talked about it a lot, and they've said to me, like, don't know what it is, but it's just a lot harder to talk about your emotions. It's a lot harder to say, like, I'm not a guy, right? I'm a female, and I've been called soft or a wimp or whatever over the years, and it drives me nuts. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to be macho, and I'm going to show you. And I've just got my head around, like, no, I am a bit soft. I am, and I'm a bit hard too, and that's okay. And that's just coming from a female point of view. So no wonder it's finding it even harder if you've got someone saying, like, don't be a wimp or come on, man up or whatever. So see how hard it is.
Yeah, definitely really tough.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
So, yeah, we're talking about mental health. We're talking quite extensively there. Anxiety, depression, also neurodivergent. Yeah. So share with me your mental health story.
I know, we just went on a bit of a tangent in the break, didn't we? So, yeah, I was sort of just saying to Victoria that I've come back and I'm really in a weird space. It just felt so incredibly powerful, and I met some incredible people. I was kind of overcoming little challenges and big challenges, and then I've come back and I'm like, oh, now what? And I'm feeling quite strange. And from feeling like a sort of advocate for mental health and like, just go outside and do this, now I feel like I'm not in a good place, but I'm like, listen to what you were saying and get out on your bike and go for a swim and keep chatting to people. And yes, so back to what you were saying is, I've just been diagnosed with ADHD. And that's huge because it just makes sense for so much stuff. And I'm like kind of in this world now where I'm like, I liked what you said. I said, I feel like a round peg in a square hole, but you said a star-shaped peg trying to fit into a round hole. I was like, I'll be a star, And so it's just kind of navigating that. I was like, I don't want to keep forcing myself into these jobs potentially that I don't necessarily belong in. And
same for me. We relate with this one.
100%. And that's it. And I think it's okay to go, I don't fit that. And that's why the ride was so important to me as well, which was part of the cool thing about the ride was I thought I was helping other people, right? But actually I went, I felt sort of helped me too, because I've gone, that's my purpose. That's what drives me. It's the communities, it's the people. It's not necessarily the 9-to-5 job. But anyway, just trying to figure out, like, I tried to go on some medication. I didn't like it. So everything feels a bit up in the air at the minute, but I'm just kind of trying to remember everything I learned on the ride, which is just like, keep going, keep pedaling, keep trying to get to the next bit, get outside, keep talking to people. But it's hard.
It is hard, and we forget our tools, don't we, at different points?
100%. I always think back to my dad, and I want to live life for him. As much as this world can get really scary and really hard sometimes, when I was on that ride, I was like, this world is beautiful and amazing, and everyone's struggling. I met so many people on the ride that were struggling, and everyone's got something going on, but it's beautiful, and like, it's trying to live it to the full,
There is so much beauty, but it's a struggle at the minute. Like, I think everyone's feeling the pressures of rising prices and different things in society. The pressures.
I'm living all of it now. I've come back and I don't have a job, and I'm like trying to find some money and trying to find where to live. I don't think I'll ever really understand the extent of how my dad felt, but sometimes I have an insight and I'm like, life is hard.
It is really tough, really tough.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
Yeah, you were saying about your ride, so the ups and downs, the good and the bad.
Yeah, it was wild.
Share with us.
It was wild.
Was it what you expected? Was it more than you expected?
It was harder. It was hard, but it was like more extremes. I was a little bit naive, and I sort of made myself naive because I'm a bit of an overthinker, and I knew
Can relate.
Yeah. Oh my God, story of my life. I thought maybe I would stop overthinking after this, but no. But I just knew it was important, and I kind of shut my brain off. I was like, I'm going to do it. And that was it. And I didn't really think about how it would go, which is good because I probably would never have got on the bike. And there was a lot that happened. My bike got run over on day 6.
How did that happen?
My bike was put in a van at the end of the day, and I was going to go off and have dinner, get to a campsite. And unfortunately, the side door of the van wasn't closed properly, and the bike rolled out and the car went over the van. And long story short, I had to get a new bike. And so that then put me in a real head spin because I thought anything can happen. And then I was sort of on my own after that for a long period of time, and I was like rushing to get to campsites and getting to campsites late, and then not being able to get dinner, and I couldn't find gas for my just lots of, and then my Garmin wouldn't work, so I didn't know where I was going. It was just, and then my phone broke, and then I think I got a horsefly bite, which seems silly, but it got infected and I had to go on antibiotics, and this was in Wales. But that was kind of the best thing that happened to me because it made me slow down, because I was just like racing through every day.
Were you going ahead of your schedule?
I made a schedule, and I was a bit over ambitious with my schedule. I was like, 90k a day, fine. And it's like, no, you need to like stop, and you need to do food shops, and you need to wash your clothes, you need to like brain space. And that's why I think I used to joke about rest days and not for your legs. Rest days are actually for the planning the next bit and the just catching up on emails or just not cycling. So I learned a lot very quickly about like, no, I need to add some rest days in, and I need to stop going so quickly because I'm missing like lunches, like eat basics. The basics weren't going well at the beginning, like eating, sleeping, getting from A to B just wasn't going to plan. Yeah, the horsefly bite was the best thing that happened because it made me stop. A lady in a surf shop who then became a really good friend, and she then joined me, and that's when the magic happened because I sort of stopped and started meeting people and stuff. But yeah, it was wild. I was camping on my own a lot, and I was like, that's fine. And then I was like, hang on a minute, I am a female, I'm on my own.
Yeah, and
that's
quite brave.
Yeah, well, I just didn't think about it. And I think, in a weird way, we're so lucky to live in Falmouth and where we are, as I don't feel vulnerable that much. I haven't done for a long time.
It's pretty safe around here. Yeah. You can camp outside.
Yeah, exactly. So I just kind of naively was like, I'll be fine. And then I was like, oh no, I feel scared. And going through cities where people are poor or don't have enough money, and here's me and my shiny bike and my bling, and I don't know, yeah, it was just like a real like, oh yes, you're quite privileged and this is scary. So that was all happening at the beginning, and the weather was awful.
What did you go through?
Oh,
it was June, but British weather.
I know, I was like, 3 months over the summer, yeah, this would be a great holiday. I'll get tan.
Yeah, maybe not.
No, I was just got a cold because I was cycling through like the worst weather. I think Scotland said that was the worst weather summer they've had in 17 years. So I was just like, great, this is great. And you know, just feeling a bit sorry for yourself.
How did you deal with that? Like the wet weather, windy weather?
You have to cycle through it, you know, and it's kind of like ironic because you think about life, you're like, well, yeah, you just got to kind of keep going, dig deep, keep going. And I think if everything was just amazing and lovely, it wouldn't be such a magical, amazing trip. But I think because of the highs and the lows, it just feels like, oh, I overcame that, I did that. That's awesome. I think it made it more of an amazing trip because you're like, oh yeah, I got through that. Yeah, you know,
you should be really proud of yourself with that.
Oh yeah. I mean, at times I was definitely like, I don't want to do this.
Did you ever get on the phone to
someone? 100%.
I can't finish.
Yeah, people are like, oh, you're so inspiring. I'm like, no, I'm an idiot, and I definitely wanted to quit lots. You know, it's like,
but you got through it.
Yeah, I got through it, and I just want to do it again. I had some beautiful moments on my own where I was just like, felt so free, and even though Scotland was so wet and cold, I was like looking at the landscape and I was like, this is stunning. I felt like I'm so lucky to be alive, and then that bittersweet thing of I wish my dad was here to see it, and then it made me sort of think about all the people that are struggling, and I'm just like, people want you here, and look at this world. And a lot of those feelings were coming through. It was difficult because I don't have all the answers. I struggled when my dad died. ADHD sort of gives a lot of difficulties, which I'm going through now. So I don't have all the answers, but all I can do is this helps me getting outside. You know, life's a bit bigger than you think it is. It's like kind of opens up, you know, talking, the chats I had.
Was that a high point, having the conversations that you did along the way? I know you said a lot of people came out. Did they join you on the ride? Or they?
Yeah. So I opened up. I was like, I want people to join me if you've either lost someone to suicide or if you've suffered with mental health. And the first half of the ride, I didn't have that many people. I had some friends join me and stuff, which was really fun. But then the second half, it was like pretty much every day. And it was amazing. Like, because I said to people, safe space to open up. It gave people the green light to kind of go.
It's what people need.
Yeah. And it's like right now we've just had some really deep chats. It's amazing. And the messages I got from people as well, just saying like, it's like they had the freedom to be open and talk to me. And so that was amazing. I was like, people want to talk about this and it helps. How can we make this happen more, you know?
I think it's starting.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
We're sort of getting people to open up a bit more.
Yeah.
And we're opening up a bit more.
I think it is easier with strangers as well. And I do think there is something about going for a walk, going for a bike, or going for a swim with people. The focus isn't on you having to talk. The focus is on the activity, but you just naturally have those chats. You know, I've got a guy mate, he's in New Zealand, he's just been on a big packing trip with some mates, and he said we just had the most amazing chats, and that wasn't the aim of it, but it just happened. So I think, like, I'm not saying everybody, if you can go bike packing, definitely do it. I recommend highly.
Sounds very fun.
Oh my god, I'm going this weekend because I'm just like desperate to get back out and go have the adventure again. But I do think it's worth getting a couple of mates together and going for the walk or going for a swim.
Yeah, keep active.
Yep.
I think we all need to keep active as much as possible, and especially through the winter months when it can be quite difficult. So tell us now, you're involved in some talks, and then you've got a charity ride, you've got loads of things that you're involved in now.
Yeah.
What's going on for you
I know.
since you got back?
Yeah, well, you know, I kind of came back and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself, like what? And slowly things are kind of naturally happening, which I need to keep reminding myself of that. And so yeah, first thing is my lovely friends at Jolly Sailor Gym asked me if I wanted to do a group ride. So I do that every Sunday, 9 o'clock at Jolly Sailor Gym in Halvasso. And it's good for me. I know on Sundays, right, I'm getting on my bike no matter what. And it's been rainy for a couple of Sundays, and I'm just like, actually, once I'm out, it's great. And I think having a group kind of gives you that sort of accountability, I think, and you always have a good time, you know. So that's really cool.
And people just turn up?
Yeah, people can just turn up. There is a Facebook page called Jolly Sailor Cycling Club, I think. So yeah, just find that. But you could also just turn up or get in touch with me. Saddle to Sea is my Instagram, so you can get in touch on there as well. I did my Instagram kind of whilst I was on the ride, and I've come back and I'm like, well, I don't know if I should keep doing that anymore. So I'm just kind of figuring out what and how and if I can keep talking about this, but the talks I'm really excited about because one's actually at a suicide prevention conference on my birthday.
Is that
13th of November in Wadebridge. Thank you. So that's going to be quite emotional, but I think needed chat. And I just want to keep doing stuff like that, like in the mental health world, if I can help in any way possible. And then I've got a talk in a sports shop in Exeter in February. And then I've got one at the Falmouth Wheelers, which is a local bike club here. So there's, and maybe at the Poly in the new year. Yeah, maybe. So there's a few things, and that's really excites me. I mean, I'm a bit of a waffler, if you can't tell. So I just need to like learn about how I could do a talk.
You're going to do great. You're going to do great. Just
so
keep it real.
Tips? Yeah. So that lights my fire because I can talk about the ride and talk about the conversations I've had and not feel like it's all just gone. So that's really exciting. And then I'm working with charities as well. So I raised money. I couldn't decide at the end of the day. I wanted to raise money for so many people, but I chose 3, and I chose Papyrus, which is a prevention of young suicide. And they're great because they've got a 24-hour hope line now, which is what I was trying to advocate for. Even though they're a young suicide prevention charity, the Hope Line is open to anyone. And what I think is really good about the Hope Line is people can call up for advice for themselves, for friends, but also for business. If you want some, like, I just need to understand some mental health stuff. I did an assist course, which it's hard, it's horrible, it's sad, but it's a mental health first aid course, and I think it's really needed. I think more companies should do it.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So look that up, sign up to a course if you can, and businesses. So that's Papyrus. And then Cornwall Mind, I wanted to help raise money for a local charity, and I'm really excited. I don't want to say too much, but I'm hoping that I can help them organise a yearly ride.
That would be great.
That would be so good. So again, try not to get too excited just in case, but that ticks everything that I'm working towards: raising awareness, getting people outside on bikes, getting people a nice day out. Like, this is the thing. I think the way my dad died, there's so much sadness with it, but it's like, no, we need to move forward. We need to try and find the light, to try and some positivity. So I think an event feels really a cool way of doing that.
Definitely. To celebrate his life as well.
To celebrate his life. And he had such a cool life, and he was such a cool person. So hell yeah. And for everyone else that is struggling. And then the third one was Sport in Mind, who are just trying to get people into sport, which is important to me, and I think it's important to everybody.
You've got loads going on.
Oh yeah, but I didn't realise until I was saying it. So yeah, what's going on?
Oh, it's been fabulous chatting to you today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in.
That's okay.
Well done on such a fantastic achievement. And how much money was it you raised?
Nearly 14,000.
And people can still donate?
Yes. Yeah.
How would they do that?
So www.saddletosea.co.uk, and there's a link there.
All right, get on it. Thanks. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.
It's time to welcome to the show Neuroscientist Nicole Vignola. She'll explain how giving out compliments or engaging in random acts of kindness can be as rewarding as receiving them.
We all know how nice the feeling is when we receive a compliment, but regularly giving compliments to others is far more rewarding. In fact, 2/5 of women feel a greater sense of worth when giving compliments, compared to just 6% who get the same feeling from receiving them. Neuroscientist Nicole Vignola is here to talk about the science behind why giving out compliments or engaging in regular acts of kindness can be as rewarding as receiving one. So thank you for being here, Nicole.
Thank you very much for having me.
How do compliments and acts of kindness affect us?
So when we give a genuine compliment or we are genuinely kind to somebody else, we release neurotransmitters that make us feel good about ourselves. So predominantly serotonin, but it's a combination of neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters, they make you feel good, they alleviate your mood, and they can leave you feeling wonderful for the rest of the day. So by being kind to others, we're actually being kind to ourselves as well.
If we're giving to other people, we get that same buzz. It's such a great feeling, isn't it, to be able to do that?
Yes, and there's a huge bonding there that's going on. When you're kind to somebody else, we're social beings. We're supposed to be connected, and by doing that, we bond to one another in a wonderful way.
So can being kind to others have an effect on how we perceive ourselves? Is it a case that sometimes when we're feeling a bit under the weather, when things aren't going great for us, if we reach out and help others, we're actually getting a benefit from that?
Yes. Have you actually ever done that? I've actually had times where I've not felt great and I've been sort of kind to someone, held the door open for them, and I've felt much better after. And I don't know if you can resonate with that feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I find that sometimes, if I'm out, I've got a lot of things on my mind, and I might be in a supermarket or something, and I just see someone who's having a bit of a difficulty maybe finding something or reaching up to get a shelf, and I just think, if I can just help, maybe that might just bring a smile to their day and just give them a little sense of that there's people out there that do care.
Exactly. And you know what I love about that is that it's a small act of kindness. You don't have to go hugely out of your way. It's just something as simple as, how can I help?
So who does the public think is the kindest person in the UK?
Well, there was a few people that came up on the survey, but I want to ask you, Richard, would you put yourself on the list of the top kindest person that you know?
See, I don't think I would, because I think there's so many people out there that do so much. And also, we only hear about those that are more well-known, and obviously on social media, there's people posting all the time. I think it's those unsung heroes. I think it's the normal people, the everyday ones that do so much that we don't even hear about. Those, to me, are the kind people.
Exactly. So, I encourage you to maybe reassess that over the coming weeks and see if you can start to begin putting yourself on the kindness list.
I will do. Thank you so much, Nicole. And yourself as well. I mean, this is great that you're able to share this information and bring this to the people, and to recognise those in our lives that are the unsung heroes, the ones that do so much. Thank you for doing this today.
Oh, that's very kind. I didn't expect that. Thank you.
Tell me more about the research and what you found out.
Oh, there was, loads. But one of the things that I think is really important is that 80% of the respondents found that we used to be kinder as a nation, and that 7 in 10 people think that social media has an impact on how kind we are. Now, I think if we can begin to be kinder with ourselves and each other, we can maybe start to create a shift in society as well. I think the problem with social media is that we don't have repercussions to the things that we say. And unfortunately, the algorithm appears to prioritize negative comments in comment sections. And it would be great to see a shift in that. But if we can begin to create a shift as well by actively thinking about what we're saying to people on the internet, then we can start to begin hopefully seeing a little bit of a difference.
I think sometimes as well, it's nice to have that genuine thing where we don't even tell people. If we do something nice, we don't have to share it on social media. We can just have that benefit ourselves. And I think that's more powerful than actually telling people.
Yes, and that's actually one of my top tips on how to be kinder is, the altruism of being kind without having to tell anybody. So, perhaps you want to make a donation and you can choose whether you want it to be anonymous. And I think that that's wonderful. Simple things like, offering somebody a cup of tea, or even just having a cup of tea with yourself and trying to find your best attributes can be really helpful in being kinder to yourself so you can be kinder to others too.
It's always interesting when we find out when people have passed away, if they are in the public eye, that they've just been secretly offering money to charities or to people that have been important in their lives that we only find out about after they pass.
Yeah, isn't that the beauty though?
So what are the best things that we can do to help other people?
Things, we could give a genuine compliment, maybe to a friend, a colleague, or maybe even a stranger. I think that's always nice. Maybe even writing a gratitude note. When last did you text someone that you care about and say, hey, I'm just thinking about you? I think that that's really a wonderful thing to receive. Another interesting one is to actively listen. Oftentimes we're in conversation just for the sheer act of having to respond, but actually listening without having anything to say is a really big act of kindness. And the small things like holding the door, making the cups of tea, etc., those all add up to a huge confidence boost in us and in others as well.
They are just simple things, as you say, that we can do, and hopefully we can spread a little bit of joy and feel good in doing so as well.
Positive feedback loop. The more you do it, the more you'll want to do it, and it's a reinforcing sort of behaviour.
So where can we find out more information about what we've been talking about today?
So tindia.co.uk and on their Instagram, tindiauk.
Thank you again, Nicole.
And that's all for this month's show.
Thanks for listening, and we look forward to you joining us for the December show.
If you missed anything on today's show,
you can download the podcast right now on Apple, Spotify and Amazon Podcast.
Don't forget to like and subscribe
to hear the new episode when it comes out, or listen back to any of our previous programmes.
For support and more information for better mental health,
visit cornwallmind.org
or call the Mind Helpline during office hours
on 0300 123 3393.
The NHS has launched a new crisis helpline. Just call 111 and press 2.
This gives you enough way to get urgent help if you're struggling with your mental health.
And you can call the Samaritans anytime for free
on 116 123.
And if you would like to be part of a show, you can get in contact. Just email aspace@speakyourmind@gmail.com.
And you can also find out more about the show if you follow Cornwall Mind on Facebook or Instagram, or on their website cornwallmind.org.
A space to speak your mind with Cornwall Mind.